Hey everybody, it's Randy with Carchaeology, and I am going to introduce you to this incredible little dune buggy. When one thinks of a dune buggy, immediately they come up with the image of the Myers-Manx, that fiberglass dune buggy that has been copied many, many times, but has become absolutely an American icon. But where did that icon start? Was it always the glittery plastic body of the Myers-Manx, or did it start out from much more humble beginnings? Well, this right here are those humble beginnings. So, in 1959, there was a gentleman in Southern California by the name of Scott McKenzie. Now, Scott was someone that from a very early age was excited about exploring the outer hills of his area. He was so interested in cars, he was so interested in off-roading, but at the time, nobody was really doing it. Nobody was running around out in the hills. Nobody was, blasting around out in the sand dunes. All of that was in its absolute infancy. He was born in the 1930s. It was the 1950s. By the time he was playing around out in the dirt, had his first Jeep, and so on and so forth. And when he was out there with his Jeep rolling around, one of his friends showed up with a Volkswagen Beetle. It was a 1952 Beetle that belonged to his friend Don Dench. Now, it was interesting to Scott in that as he went through the hills, Don followed right along in the bug and made it everywhere that the Jeep went. And he was really impressed with just how nimble the Volkswagen chassis was and how well that silly little bug made its way. So, in 1959, he ended up picking up a 1957 Beetle that had been damaged, and he ended up cutting it up to turn it into a bit of a dune buggy. He removed the body from the chassis, he shortened the chassis so it had a shorter wheelbase, it could climb over sharper things, and he developed a car that he called the Chimp. Now, the Chimp ended up kind of taking off. He entered it in some events and stuff that were around. It was a very adept and very nimble vehicle, and quite frankly, it kind of kicked everybody's butt. And everyone took notice. People wanted to see more of the Chimp, and he ended up building other Chimps as well. So Scott McKenzie was really the father of the dune buggy in that way, in that he was the first one to actually create a vehicle that could be bought or be built in kit form, and it was advertised back in the magazines back in the 1960s. Prior to Bruce Myers coming along and doing the fiberglass buggy. So currently there's about 12 of these Chimp cars that are known to exist, and this particular one here was just released from long-term ownership in the California desert, and I think it very well might be one of the best Chimps in existence. So this Chimp belonged to Scott McKenzie's good friend Don Dench, the one that introduced him to Volkswagen power right from the very beginning. Now, looking at the history of this particular car, I believe that this was first registered as you see it in 1961. It's got a stamped number on the tube frame in here that's right above the dash there. And looking at the paperwork that I've got for it, there is a 1964 title that shows it with these black California plates that are on it. Now, black California plates, for those that are not in the know, those were all introduced in 1963, 1964, and if you had different color plates prior to that, everybody got that black and yellow plate. So this title may have been from when the plates were issued, but looking at it, it looked like the first registration date was 1961, which is really, really, really friggin' early for a street-legal Volkswagen-powered dune buggy. The other great thing about this car, while it has had some upgrades over the years by the original owner, different things like the little bit bigger taillights that were introduced in 1962. I don't think those were on it in 1961. That would have been a bit miraculous. The engine has had some mild upgrades. There's been different tires put on the back, so on and so forth. The carpet, when I looked at the receipts and stuff, was installed in the early 1970s. Obviously some little changes here and there, but it is absolutely period pure original owner California off-road history, and I'm super stoked to add this to my collection of stuff, because I really think it's quite possibly one of the coolest all original early dune buggies out there in the world. So let me show you some of the little details that are just tripping me out on this particular car. Now, when Scott was experimenting with the Chimp, he developed a car that he called the Pioneer. Now, the Pioneer was based on a Volkswagen Beetle chassis. He removed the floor pans. He basically worked with just the center spine of the car. And he put a seat right over the middle of it. In fact, he only had one headlight. It was right in the middle. It was like a little Cyclops. And the Pioneer was a really cool vehicle. And he had a lot of fun with that, experimenting with real big tires, really kind of exploring what could be done with the Volkswagen chassis. Now, looking at the photos of the Pioneer, I see historic photos that show this wheel on that Pioneer car. Now, it's been told that the Pioneer was rebuilt into a Chimp at some point, and possibly fitted with a Corvair engine at one point as well. This car doesn't show any sign of having a Corvair engine in it, but those wheels look absolutely identical to the ones that were on the Pioneer car. And the Pioneer car obviously was rebuilt into something else, so it's possible that this was the Pioneer that he ended up turning over to his buddy Don, and then it was finished as you see it. Now, it's the only Chimp that I've seen that actually has functional doors, and these doors are great. Everything obviously is trimmed out in aluminum, but a very simple latch. There's a little door pocket here that's a pretty cool setup. Looking into this, you've got regular Volkswagen Beetle seats. Another thing that was really interesting and a big part of Scott McKenzie's exploration was turning brakes. He was the first one to do 2 hand brakes so that the rear wheels are operated by a single handle. What's great about that is it gives an opportunity to yank up that handle on whatever side you want to turn into, and it makes it turn super sharp, super fun. Other neat details on this, you can see the headlight switch here. Actually, that's the wiper switch. There's another switch here that says sand and road. I don't know exactly what that does. It seems to be stuck, so I haven't played with it. You've got the Volkswagen pedal assembly, of course. This shifter here looks to be a fairly early performance shifter from a company called Dino Dinosaurs. The dashboard on this is really fantastic. These really cool little English gauges for amps and oil pressure. You've got your Volkswagen speedometer, of course, but it's cool to look at the way that this is all shaped down here with the little cowling that comes up to that speedometer. It's not just open back there. The edges are all folded around, kind of looks like an old British sports car, Austin Healey or something, but all handmade. You've got the fuse box that is put in right here. That's a Volkswagen fuse box. You've got a wiper motor that was installed here, so it's got functional wipers. Cool little pockets that are there to hold all the treasures and keep them from bouncing around. Back here in the center, there's a small console that has the fuel gauge and a fuel shutoff as well. Now, underneath a panel here in the back, there is a fuel tank from a split-screen Volkswagen bus, and then the battery in there as well. So as you come outside, you see the fuel filler neck and that early style Volkswagen bus gas cap with this great little chain so you don't lose it if it bounces off. It's an all-tube framework all around the body here. It's all skinned with aluminum the way all of the Chimps were done back in the day. And the finish work on this thing is pretty damn impressive. Looking at the spacing of the rivets, looking at the way that everything is finished, nice rounded corners, everything fits so nice in there. You've got this louvered engine cover here. Most of the Chimps had a very exposed engine, where this one has a bit of a body around it to protect it from the weather. Obviously, the top here is open, an oil cooler right on the top. It also has a France toilet paper oil filters. This is actually an oil cleaner or oil filter that uses a toilet paper roll as the filtering element. It's also got this great intake here, the air filter here to keep the sand and stuff out. And this is an official real deal Sandmaster air filter. Now, Sandmaster was the company that Scott founded after he really started going with the Chimp. He realized, hey, there's a business here, I can make something of it, and he started to develop other dune buggies and other products for off-roaders. Now, Sandmaster eventually turned into McKenzie's off-road supercenters, which have been a really big part of the off-road community and are still in business today. So Scott McKenzie, he took his passion of play in the dirt, turned it into a business that is really rocking and rolling and providing an awful lot of entertainment for people even today. But let's see, let me go more into detail here. Obviously, we've got the black California plates on there. This car has been sitting since about 2020, according to the tag. It was up on jack stands in a garage in the high desert. I got called in about this collection.
Sounds good.
Was super excited to go check it out, and was fortunate enough to be able to buy this and make it mine. And I'm really thrilled to have it. Let's see, other fun stuff here. You've got your headlights, of course. Let me try to get back all the flash. There's a little toolbox here, a little trunk in the front. There's an amazing tool roll in here. There's tools that have all been painted bright colors so you don't get them lost in the sand when you're out stuck and that sort of thing. Brilliant stuff. That all closes up. There's a lock on there that latches it down. It's got this great little bullet mirror on it, but that's been expanded with a big plastic mirror here for better visibility. The windshield here folds forward, although I did notice when I tried to fold it forward that it does come in contact with those wiper arms there, the stubs. So it's not exactly perfect, but you can fold that windshield forward so you've got, you know, absolutely wind in your face. Other fun stuff, there's tabs here on the front apron there where there was probably a tow bar that attached to that. It's your basic Beetle front end. The rear end is super interesting, however, because it features kind of a blend of stuff. So let me get down underneath here and you can check it out. So this has gear reduction boxes on it that were something that you saw on the Volkswagen Transporter. So that reduces the gear ratio of the back, which definitely helps a lot with getting this thing to climb. It's also interesting that there's been some cool fabrication for this neat support bar that goes forward of the transmission to really give those swing axles a firm planting on the ground. If you're climbing over rocks and so on and so forth, that keeps everything in line. Super cool to kind of see the way that's all put together. There's a dog underneath here, of course, that is not original equipment, but you can see as you look down forward, the center part of the spine of the original Beetle floor pan, and then the little pockets that are next to it. Up at the very front, you can see parts of the Volkswagen floor pan underneath where your feet are, but everything back here goes up quite a bit. So there's some amazing clearance if you're going over crazy stuff. Let's see, we'll come back out here, pop open the engine lid, and see what we have back here. So this has a Zenith 2-barrel carburetor on it. It's been converted to 12-volt electrics, which we saw was done back in 1972, I believe, when he was working on the car. It has dual port manifolds here, but it's not a normal Volkswagen dual port manifold. I haven't looked up the engine number here to see what that case started out as, but it definitely gets up and scoots for being such a light and interesting little car. Also, the exhaust on it is really trick, dual exhaust with mufflers on both sides. It has functional heat that blows from the fan shroud, works its way up through the body, and then comes out forward of the seats in these neat little vents right here. So these are controlled, these knobs here control each side, and then you turn this vent to push the air where you want it to go. So these vents, it looks like something I've seen before called a univent, which was something that was offered to Volkswagen owners to add more ventilation. However, these are actually made out of a cast metal, so it's a really early design for that, but really slick to see that little piece. Original seat belts and stuff in it. There's side curtains that we have for it that go into the doors, and there's wing nuts that hold them in place with a good strong metal framework that goes around there. I'm hoping that as we dig through the property, we might find the original top or remnants of it. It'd be neat to put the top back on it because obviously it had one back in the day. You can see these snaps here. You can see the support back there around the roll bar as well. Let's see. I mean, that's probably about it. I've rambled on here for about 15 minutes about this funky little dune buggy and told you a bit of history. So if somebody tells you that they found a really early dune buggy, well, it's hard to get much earlier than this. So this one we're dating to 1961. Scott McKenzie built his first Chimp in 1959. So this is really early on. This is where it started. This is what it was all about. And if it wasn't for Don Dench and his 52 Beetle keeping up with his friend Scott McKenzie in his Jeep, well, maybe the whole Volkswagen off-road scene wouldn't have happened in the first place. From those mighty seeds, those little seeds of experience there, grew a whole industry of Volkswagen-powered off-road. And this little car is a part of that somewhere along the way. In any case, I hope you learned a little something. I hope you enjoyed the little walk around of the Chimp. Again, I am so excited to have this thing in my collection. It is a neat piece of history, and I'm excited to share the story of this car and where it's been with you in further episodes of Carchaeology. And I'm finding out through friends of Scott and through the remaining family that this little buggy has been on some adventures around the world that are spectacular. This car's been up to Alaska. It's been down to the tip of Mexico and everywhere in between. And somewhere in the family archives are some photos of those adventures. And I really hope that we can dig those things out, save those, and share those with the world, because that's neat stuff. History like this doesn't come along every day. But when you're me and people call you and say, hey, wow, I found a neat thing, sometimes you get lucky and you end up with something like this in your garage. So thank you again so much for watching. Keep on digging them up and driving them. I'm going to hop in this thing and go tear it up. Bye-bye.